Good morning. Whether you are here in person or whether you're joining us online, you are welcome here. No matter who you are or where you are in your spiritual journey, you are celebrated here. If you are visiting here and you are not on a regular list, on the list to get our regular newsletters, if there's a form outside on the table you can fill out and you will get it, or just go to ordinarylife.org and you can do that. We begin Ordinary Life every week in silence. It is our way of acknowledging that we have the intention to be aware of living in the heart of sacred mystery, and that this sacred mystery seeks to come alive and find expression through how we live our lives. So if it's helpful to close your eyes, do that, and we'll have a moment of silence. May grace be in our heads and in our thinking. May grace be in our eyes and in our seeing. May grace be in our ears and in our hearing. May grace be in our mouths and in our speaking. May grace be in our hearts and in our understanding. And may grace be at our ends and at our departing. And may what we do here in our effort to grow in love, compassion, and justice benefit all beings everywhere. Amen. Last night, after an outstanding presentation on anthropology and neurology, which I was not expecting, Nadia, who will be out in just a moment, consented to answer some questions, and at the beginning of that time, I screwed up because I was so anxious about making sure I got all the questions I thought you would want ask, that I didn't do something that was very important that I want to do now. And that is, I want to thank Kim and John Watson for starting the Kerley endowment that and those of you who support it so generously, that allow us to have an event like last night. Thank John and Kim for that. And always thank the crew back there who run the live stream, Tim and Mike and Joshua and John and Corbin. Thank you for that. Joy Llewellyn, who is here, right over here. She ran the registration desk last night. Thank you for that. And thank Janice Barber, who is there for bringing cookies that we didn't eat. So maybe there's some more left over for today for that. But I want to thank especially Arlene and Ben Wells. Arlene did a lot of really heavy lifting to get Arlene here and work out all the details. Ben did a wonderful job with advertising, the flyers that put out last night, and all of that. So thank you for that. And you can go get her. And I want to thank St. Paul's for supporting a desire that Dr. McDonald and I have had for years to get Nadia Bolz-Weber here. And so she's on her way out, and I will do this introduction. Nadia Bolz-Weber founded the House for All Sinners and Saints in Denver, Colorado, where she served until 2018. And then she stepped down to focus on her role as a public theologian and author. And in August of 2021, she was installed as the first pastor of public witness for the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America's Rocky Mountain Synod. And in addition, she serves as theologian in residence at Montview Boulevard Presbyterian Church in Denver, where she occasionally preaches and teaches. The Washington Post wrote about her. Nadia Bolz-Weber is a tatted up, foul-mouthed, champion to people sick of being belittled as not Christian enough for the right or too Jesus-y for the left. So she is here. So last night, Nadia said, by the way, this is the picture I held up last night of her on the cover of Sojourners magazine. And last night she said that one of the things that we can do to stay sane during this time is unplug from media. But she didn't mean to unplug from some aspects of it. So just commercial media. So she highly recommends Substacks. I'm going to highly recommend her Substack. This is the splash page currently that's up currently on her website. So for $55 a year, you can get the corners delivered to your mailbox. I have been a subscriber to this for a long time. However, during COVID, I discovered that instead of turning on the news, if I go to the Substack's website, then the richness is just amplified. Guess it's like getting up in the morning and going out and get the paper. So if you click on to this, then you get frequent updates. I don't know how often they're updated. Sermons that she preaches, a link to her podcast. It's really, really, really rich.
Or you can actually just shoot us an email and get it for free if you'd rather. So it's a voluntary paywall. Yeah.
Voluntary?
Yeah. So
pay $55.
Substack's interesting. One of the reasons I love it, and I get a lot of my information about the world, is because there's no ads. Since it's subscriber-supported media, what I love is that people can read my words without their visual field also including ads for mattresses or whatever. But the same with a lot of journalists have switched, really great journalists have switched over to Substack, and I subscribe to their newsletters. Just because, the algorithmic overlords don't always have our best interest at heart. So if there are people whose writing you're really interested in, you can just get it directly into your inbox without having to deal with algorithms or advertising on Substack.
That's what your most recent sermon on your website is about, is confirmation bias.
Yeah.
But if you click on the YouTube, I found that out. If I watch YouTube and I go down a rabbit hole, then there is this, if you watch this, you would also like.
Right.
Yeah. And you also avoid ads for Big Pharma, which come on every 12 minutes.
They do, I know. Yeah.
So anyway. So those of you who were here last night know that our time was filled with spontaneous applause during the evening. And I can tell you from personal experience, and what I used to do when I was teaching homiletics in seminary would tell preachers to be that giving a 20 to 30 minute sermon where you're physically and emotionally involved is like doing 8 hours of manual labor. So we have worked her hard. 2 hours last night, preaching both times today, and this time. So we've asked her to do a lot. So she has no idea what's coming. And years ago, I used to watch Inside the Actor's Studio with James Lipton. And then I watched Stephen Colbert and found out that he had the Colbert questionnaire. James Lipton ended his program asking actors the same set of questions. Colbert has his questionnaire. And so I decided to put those two together and put them in the rhetorical blender that we have in our research lab here at St. Paul's and come up with the Kerley questionnaire, which has been through the scientific lab here at St. Paul's, and it has been scientifically proven, that if people answer these questions, they will be truly known. Even more importantly, they will truly know themselves. So,
can someone get me a cup of coffee before we do this? Could I have a cup of coffee? Thank you so much.
She's going right there.
Just with cream.
Joy's going to get it. Thank
you. I feel like I'm going to need it after hearing that. Thank you so much. Yeah.
These are really heavy questions.
Okay, yeah.
Are you ready
good.
to
I'm
be
ready.
known?
All right, ready.
Here we go. By the way, I want to put these books up so that you all can see them during the time we're talking. Okay, Nadia. What is the best sandwich?
Oh, the Reuben. Reuben, grilled, but the bread has to be grilled. Yeah, I love a Reuben.
Where do you get it?
Well, I mean, it's just if it's on the menu, I'll order it. So I don't have one specific place. Although there is a place called Steuben's in Denver, which is really great. But yeah, I love a grilled, like marbled rye and, sauerkraut and yeah.
What is the one thing that you own that you should throw away?
Every single thing that is a size 10. Those days are not coming back.
Do you still own the upright bass?
No. My ex-husband has it. Yeah.
You had a custody battle over the bass.
Oh, no. I never played it.
You just had it.
Yeah, I had an upright bass, and my daughter played it. Sometimes we'd have a bluegrass service at House for All Sinners and Saints, and she'd play it. Yeah.
Okay, I wondered about that. What is your favorite thing to do with your free time?
I spend a lot of my life cooking, and sometimes I'll cook all 3 meals for us during the day. It's my absolute joy. When I'm cooking, I never wish I was doing something else. And I really love the process of deciding what to make, getting all the ingredients out, making a huge mess in my kitchen, cooking it, and then putting it all back to right. I don't know. And then like wiping the counters down with vinegar and water again. And it's like, I don't know. I thoroughly love the fact that I get to cook a lot of our meals. And then I spend, like I said last night, I spend a lot of time walking in the park that's right by our house.
What's your favorite thing to cook?
I do a lot of baking. Oh, thank you so much. Oh my God, bless you. Thank you. So as I mentioned last night, I'm a sacred harp singer, and sacred harp it's the earliest American musical form that's original here, and it's shape note music. And so every Monday I sing sacred harp with maybe 10 or 12 other singers for about 2.5 hours, and I always bake something for the group. So I show up with different things. I've really gotten into this olive oil cake that has fresh lemon in it. I've really enjoyed making that. So I do a lot of baking too.
Okay. What is the scariest animal?
What is the scariest animal?
Besides the human.
Yeah. I don't really have an answer for that. Okay. I don't find any animals particularly scary. Although, when I'm hiking, I do hike in Green Mountain a lot, and during the summers there are rattlesnakes. So I definitely am wary of those.
Okay. Last night you said that, whereas I said a lot of people who may attend this gathering would say that they are spiritual but not religious. You say that you're religious but not spiritual. Now, I meant to ask you last night, what do you mean when you say that liturgy is simultaneously destabilizing and centering? Because that's quite non-dual.
Yeah. I guess I think of it as it's destabilizing in the fact that it doesn't center my ego like every other thing in my life does, feels like. So it centers the ancient scriptures, and it centers the idea of coming to the table with a bunch of people who you might not choose out of a catalog, and it asks us to confess our sins and receive absolution. Those are always sort of destabilizing things. And then I find it centering because, like I said last night, it has its own integrity. It's been sort of worn smooth by generations of the faithful. It's reliable. It doesn't need to be updated constantly. It's worked for generations, and it works for us too. So
I want to give you some feedback about your time last night and the sermon that I heard today, because you're very different in those venues.
Mm-hmm.
I bet a half a dozen people have come up to me to say about last night, she was so genuine, she was so authentic, it was so good, as you said, to kind of speak from where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And what I got last night is that you have a prophetic voice that you use very pastorally. And then in the sermon today, you got a pastoral voice, which you use very prophetically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really a gift that you have, and I appreciate you sharing it with us.
That's nice.
One of the things that you said to people when they would join your church in Denver is, we are going to disappoint you. We're going to let you down. You need to prepare for that and decide now, how are you going to deal with that? Whether you're going to walk out or whether you're going to let the cracks that are created allow the grace of God to come in and heal. I love that, because I'm sometimes anxious that things I say will alienate people. I've had people get up and walk out. How do you keep them from doing that?
I mean, lock the doors. Someone said. Lock the doors. Yeah, we would lead with that, because people would be a little idealistic about House for All Sinners and Saints when they came. They're like, this is what I think church should be, and I tend to recoil from idealism. And so we would say, hey, we love it too, but you need to know we will disappoint you, or at some point I'll say something and hurt your feelings or whatever. So we tried to lead with the, hey, we will disappoint you like every other church. And the fact is, some people, when that happened, when we failed to meet their expectations or we disappointed them in some way, would leave in a huff, which is a pattern that those people had with churches and groups and whatever. And then some people would come up to me and they'd be like, remember at the Welcome to House brunch when you said this thing? And I go, yeah. And they were like, is that what's happening right now? And I go, yeah, probably. And they'd be like, okay, and they'd take it, and then they would come back the next week. So for some people, just that message alone was enough to reorient them to, oh, I'm having this feeling, maybe I'm wanting to pull back, but I remember they said this, and maybe I'll lean in instead. It was enough just to have that thing in the back of their head. And it's interesting because I just said this, I guess there's the Center for Action and Contemplation has a podcast that Brian McLaren does, and I just recorded that last week, and I think it might come out in May. But they wanted me to talk about love, and love is just, it's lovely, of course, but it's just not something I talk about that much. And I said, at the end, I realized that when I was pastoring House for All Sinners and Saints, that congregation was really centered in grace. Like, that was the point of gravity. That's what we talked about all the time. And I realized a few years in how they really loved each other well. And I was sort of amazed by it when I realized how well they loved each other. And I'm convinced that if from the time people showed up, if what we talked about instead of grace was love, if what we said is, instead, we want you to understand we're really about offering grace to ourselves and other people. If what we said instead was, we want you to know this is a community that loves really well, it would not have happened. And I'm absolutely convinced that they would not, because then love as an aspiration or as an ideal that we have to meet becomes a basis of accusation against ourselves and others when we fail to be loving. So now it's like, well, I wasn't loving, and then I feel bad about that, or that thing they did, well, that wasn't fair. Aren't we supposed to be about love? And then it's a basis of accusation and then falling short and judging ourselves and others. Whereas with grace, there's nothing, what are you going to judge? It's the magic sauce. And so offering it to ourselves and others and having a commitment to that freed us to love each other well without being worried about, are we doing it good enough, you know? It's interesting. Some things only happen as a result of focusing on other things. And we want to go at stuff as Westerners straight on all the time. Here's the result we want, so we're going to focus on it to make sure we get that result. And some things don't happen like that. Mm-hmm. They happen as a result of focusing on other things.
Mm-hmm. Apples or oranges?
Apples.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because oranges, I just can't deal with that stringy stuff on the outside. No thanks.
And you can't really put spread cheese on an orange slice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So, window or aisle?
I usually, if it's an overnight flight, if it's longer than 3 or 4 hours, then window, so I can kind of lean my head. But if it's under, then aisle.
Okay.
Because of the legs situation.
So what sound or noise do you like?
Oh my God, birds.
Okay.
I know, I talked a lot about birds last night, but one of my contemplative practices is when I'm on a walk, when I'm outside, is to stop and try and see if I can hear birds. Because a lot of times they are making sounds, but we tune them out. And so it's a contemplative practice to be present enough and intentional enough with my attention that I listen for them. Mm. Mm-hmm.
What sound or noise do you not like?
Leaf blowers.
Oh my
absolutely.
God.
Oh, it makes me so angry. Leaf blowers drive me crazy. Or people who insist on talking on a speakerphone in public. Or they watch videos in public with a speaker on. I mean, we should be able to, citizens arrest. I'm sorry. That's not okay.
What's your favorite odor?
That's a weird word to use. Instead of scent. Let's see. The smell of my husband's aftershave.
Okay.
Yes.
Your least favorite scent?
I don't know. Probably burnt, like when stuff is burnt in my oven, like it spills over and it has that acrid burnt smell that I can't get rid of.
Okay, James Lipton asked people what their favorite curse word was. And I think...
I promised not to say it, though. You asked me. Or no, the church did.
But since I was part of that conversation, I think I now know what it is.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, what profession other than your own would you like to do? If you weren't doing what you're doing.
Well, to be clear, there is no other work in the world I would rather do than what I do. I am the luckiest person in the world to get to do what I do. So there is no upgrade for me in terms of vocation, truly. I can't think of a single thing. If I was not a theologian, I probably would have been a lawyer, because law and theology as disciplines are actually very similar intellectually, that you're taking a corpus, you're taking a group of text, and you're applying a sort of interpretive lens to say, what does this mean for what's happening now in the world? So I probably would have leaned into that. Although, let me tell you a story about this question. Before I ever had any media training, when I very first started being a public person, the Church Times is the Church of England's publication that I think it comes out monthly. It's a magazine. And I've done a lot of stuff in the UK, and they said, hey, they have a back page interview type of thing, like with the questions. Okay. And they said, we'd love to have you do our back page interview. And I said, great. And now I had not had a media training. And they said, okay, well, here are the questions. And I just answered the questions. And one of them was, what would you be doing if you weren't a pastor? What would you be? And I said, I don't know, probably a lawyer or a crack whore is what I said, because I thought it was like really funny, because it's like fun. That's something funny I'd say like in a conversation. I didn't know that doesn't translate into text. And so they did not inform me that what their back page interview was. They took the questions out and just presented what people said. They did not tell me this, nor did they tell me that on their website, on their website, the banner was going to say when this issue came out. This is probably in like 2005 or 6, right? That the banner would say, American Lutheran pastor Nadia Bolz-Weber says if she was not a clergywoman, she would be a crack whore, which is very different than a very off-the-cuff, funny, ironic response to an actual question.
You get a lot of blowback about that?
No, I just felt like humiliated. Yeah.
So I agree with you. I love what I do. I love the opportunity to teach. And I think if I have read you correctly and heard what you said last night correctly, my experience is that the person who benefits the most from my work is me. Is that I want to talk about where I am and what's going on with me, and I'm glad for other people to look over my shoulder. And I've got the sense that that's true for you, that you embrace that. You benefit from what you do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's all I'm doing is reminding myself of things I need to hear, discovering some sort of wisdom that helps me. I mean, when my readers come up and want to thank me for what my work has meant to them, I'm like, oh my God, same team. We're the same. We are the same. I don't, again, like I said last night, I don't have this like, I have such an excess of these particular virtues that I have so much to share with you. It's that I have a deficit and I'm desperate for more. So when I figure it out, I just share it. And people are like, oh, I was desperate for more too. That's just it's a different thing. Yeah.
What if we turn that coin over? What profession other than your own would you least like to do?
I sometimes will drive by things like vacuum cleaner repair stores and think, what would it be like to spend 40 hours of my week in a sort of inelegant and not aesthetically pleasing environment that has a boring thing that you have to be doing? And so probably working in like a Hoover repair storefront doing customer service. That would probably be my least favorite.
I don't see you doing customer service
No,
well.
I could never do customer service. Never. No.
Have you ever asked anybody for their autograph?
It would have to be when I was a teenager. I have no memory of it. No, I have no memory of it.
First concert?
Frankie Goes to Hollywood, 1984, Rainbow Music Hall, Denver, Colorado. Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite movie?
There are movies I have a strong affection for. I loved a movie called Carrington, about Dora Carrington, the painter, and Lytton Strachey's relationship. I love Spinal Tap, Forever and Ever, Amen. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Funny stuff. I want to ask you a bit about recovery. We talked about that some last night, and you've been sober for 33 years. Do you make a difference between not using and being sober?
Yes. It's interesting right now because there is a trend We talked about it a little bit yesterday. There is a trend towards people who want to live alcohol-free, but they don't identify as alcoholics and they don't do 12-step work. There also are a lot of people who know they have a problem with alcohol and drugs, but they don't want to do the 12-step work because of the God thing. Mm-hmm. And I would argue because of the ego deflation process as well. And so there's a lot of things offered that kind of help people not drink, but do it without them having to confront their character defects or without having to give their will and their life over to God and whatnot. So for me, if I consider people to be sober who do not use any, because the other thing is some people would be like sober from alcohol, but they still smoke pot, right? So there's a million varieties of this now. And I am very old school. Being sober is being alcohol and drug free. And that even includes some of the drugs that people use to detox, and those are fine, but Suboxone, things like this. Anyway, and it also means you don't microdose shit either. So there's a million ways that people have of variations around this, and all I know is what worked for me, and I'm just very, very old-fashioned about it, and I'm very much a traditionalist when it comes to being clean and sober. And the reason is what I have experienced in my life and in the lives of people who commit to that path without half measures. It really transforms people, and they end up having a type of integrity that does not come necessarily with the other ways. Now, I do believe in harm reduction. So if it's going to reduce the amount of harm you're doing to yourself and other people to do these other paths, then that's good. It's not bad. I just think being sober is a really, really particular path.
So a man named James Hollis, who used to be here as the director of the Jung Center, written a lot of books that border on spirituality and psychology, he says that we live in an addictive culture, and our addiction has to do with acquiring more and more stuff. It was related to what you were talking about last night about like not being content. And my answer to the sobriety question is all about grace. Is that people who are sober know grace, I think. I mean, that's my experience. And talking about grace in public or even in church sometimes is a hard thing to do because grace is a gift that you don't earn. Lutherans are big on grace.
Yeah, that's our thing, yeah.
Okay. So who is the living person that you most admire? I don't really have heroes because I think everyone's much more complicated than they seem from their Wikipedia page. Who do I most admire? It's interesting. I tend to admire the people I know really well more than I admire people who I don't know at all. I haven't thought about it till right now, but I have great admiration for my husband. He had sole custody of his kids from the time they were little, and their mom's alive. That is very rare. I have great admiration for my big sister, who experienced these double tragedies in the same year that were devastating, and she didn't bear it with grace. She bared it with grit, which is different, I think. And I have an incredible admiration for my dear friend Teresa Timms, who's the dean of the chapel at Princeton. Grew up in unbelievable poverty and addiction and public housing in Mississippi, and is now the dean of the chapel at Princeton. Like, I don't know, the people who I know best are the ones I admire the most, because I know
what their battles have been. Yeah.
What do you think is the future of the church?
I think the church in the future will continue to be decluttered. Decluttered.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. I think that from what I see, I think larger churches are doing fine. Medium-sized churches are struggling, and small churches are closing, mostly. I think that as we continue, as the sort of mainline Protestantism continues to diminish and diminish. I mean, if you look at the demographic of the people who are in this room, how many are going to be alive in 20 years? Yeah. Right? So, and if this is if these are the sort of real stakeholders and people who provide, sort of stability for these communities, then there's a reality to that, right? And a lot of churches will close. We won't have the colleges, the summer camps, the parachurch organizations. A lot of these will go by the wayside, and yet the church will be fine, because no matter what property, because I think that big organizations, property, prestige, influence in their culture, all of these things are signs of a kingdom. I'm not convinced those are the signs of the kingdom. And because of that, it doesn't mean that way of doing church was wrong. It was faithful, all of that. But we could lose all of that, and the body of Christ would be absolutely fine. Because I think that people will continue to gather in the name of the triune God. And maybe it's in like parking garages and living rooms and parks, but people will do it, and will be compelled to tell the story of the night Jesus was betrayed by his friends, and hold up bread and say it's his body, and it's for forgiveness, and it's for you, and give it to each other, and sing the Psalms. And I just, that's not going away. That is the compelling, we can't help, like, how can we keep from singing type of, oh Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. That it will continue to be compelling, and people will continue to do this because this is what the church is. And so the church is fine. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about being a public theologian. You're not a pastor of a church. So you're going out to do these red state things. What else? What does a public theologian do?
Whatever she wants. I have what's called a letter of call. Lutherans have to have a letter of call to stay on the clergy roster. So I have a letter of call as pastor of public witness from my bishop's office. And it attaches me locally in Denver to 3 pulpits. So I'm like a theologian in residence at the Episcopal Cathedral in Denver, at Montview Presbyterian. So I preach at these 2 quarterly, each of them quarterly. And then I am, if you go on the website for New Beginnings, which is the congregation that I serve inside the walls of the women's prison, I am the assistant pastor, which I'm very proud of. The senior pastor, I think, is 30, and I'm the assistant pastor. And so for years, I've been part of this community, worshiping community inside the Denver Women's Prison. And I have to maintain membership in an ELCA congregation to maintain my letter of call. So I am the only unincarcerated member of New Beginnings worshiping community. So we worship every other week, and then I meet with the women. Pastor Sam and I meet with our church council that is inside every week.
In prison.
Yeah. It's great. Prison church is the closest to House for All Sinners and Saints I could find. And it's chaos, and it's wonderful. And there was this moment. I usually have one of the women who are on our Inside Church Council be a chalice bearer at the Eucharist, but there was this Sunday I forgot to ask one of them. So I finished presiding at the Eucharist, and I have the paten, and then I go, oh, I don't have a chalice bearer, and I take the chalice, and I just make eye contact with like the first woman I see in the front row, and I go, would you come up here and do this with me? And her whole face lights up when she realizes what I'm asking her, and she just has brown nubs for teeth. Methamphetamine does something very particular to human teeth. So she lights up and smiles, and it's just these brown nubs. And and she's like, me? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, come up here. So she came up, and I gave her the chalice, and I told her what to say. And then we're serving, and I look over, and I see that she has the word savage tattooed on her face. And I was like, oh, there's nothing I would rather be doing, and no one I'd rather be doing it with, and no place I'd rather be than right here doing this with her. So anyway, so locally, that's what I do. And then mostly just preach and then serve the women inside. And then I just go about my work in my life to try and come up with something to say on the corners, and try and, usually I'm struggling with an idea or a character defect or a particular type of sorrow or something. And then I figure out what to say and I put it out there, and that's it. Sometimes I accept invitations like this. I don't do as much of this as I used to. Yeah. I don't know.
So there were some people who were not here last night. Say just a little bit about your evangelical work in doing the Red State Revival.
Yeah, the Red State Revival tour was about just me trying to figure out what was mine to do after the election, and feeling like really strongly that I didn't want people to lose heart right now, and that we need each other, and that it's very important for people of faith like ourselves to do whatever we need to do to not concede the Christian faith to white Christian nationalists. They're very loud and very powerful right now, so that if we are a little shy about our faith, it's not the moment to be shy about our faith. We have to be out loud. I think it's really important for us to believe in the gospel out loud right now, so that there is a counter narrative. And so I just do this. I'm touring, I think, 24, 25 different red states this year. And it's really stripped down. I don't have a slide deck. I don't have musicians. It's just me preaching and getting people to sing with me. We do a lot of singing. And at the end of the night, the call to action is, people have stickers that are different colors, and the call to action is that they find 4 or 5 people with the same color sticker because they're their neighbors. We had collected their zip codes when they registered, and they're their neighbors, and to make a plan to break bread together in the next month, because we need each other. And it's I think the pandemic taught us 2 related but different things. One is how important it is to figure out how to be connected if we cannot be in the same room with each other. And the other is, I think it taught us how important it is to be in the same room as each other. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to get people in a room together. And some people are upset I'm not live streaming it, I'm not recording it and making it available. I just refuse, because it really is about what the experience of being in the same room as other people is, what that experience is like, because we're different when we're face to face. Hasn't 20 years of social media, I feel like we live in a world where all the forgiveness has been vacuumed out of it after 20 years of social media. The way that people interact with each other online is not the way human beings are supposed to interact, because there's supposed to be a consequence if we're shitty to each other, right? Like, in an evolutionary way, anthropologically, because social cohesion is so important for survival. If you're shitty to someone, there should be a cost to it, right? And so even if you feel like you want to be, if they're right in front of you, you're most likely not going to. I got to hang out with Monica Lewinsky a few years ago. She's filled with grace. She's an incredible person. Imagine being known your name being synonymous with your shittiest day when you were 21 years old. She's my age. She's in her 50s now. And people have been horrible to her, cruel to her, and she's been the butt of jokes every single day since she was 21. And she's really patient zero when it comes to internet bullying. And I said to her, how often have people been horrible to you to your face? And she said, I can count it on one hand. So do you remember when Facebook came out and we were like, oh my God, do you have it? It's so great. Like, you get to find people that like you were in high school with, and I just saw pictures of my niece's baby on the East Coast, and it's just like connecting us with people. It's connecting us with people. It's connecting us with people, and it's free. And I'm like, oh my God, if somebody offers us some shit for free that we think is going to be connecting us with people, can we all agree to run as fast as we can? Because if you remember, the moment that it became so debilitatingly toxic is when they started selling advertising. Because now they had to prioritize content that would keep us glued to our screen in a really particular way. And outrage gives us a dopamine spike in a way that nuance doesn't. And so, so we thought it was going to connect us, and it has And do you remember when we thought the worst thing about social media was like people just posted pictures of like their best moments, and then we're comparing ourselves to them and our worst moments? Remember when that was the worst thing we thought social media was doing to us? I'd do anything to have that time back. Being, all of that is to say, being with other human beings in the same room is really important to communicate that way, and if possible, mostly only that way, if it's possible. Yeah.
So last night you pulled something off that I would have said, that ain't going to work. You got us to sing together.
I did, yeah.
It was wonderful.
Isn't it great?
Yes.
It's magic. I mean, this is so deeply human. Look, for most of the 300,000 years that we have been Homo sapiens, the only forms of entertainment we had were storytelling, drumming, and singing together. And that's it, right? And we just did it for ourselves in our homes and with our communities. And those things have been just stripped from us in a way. Now they're all professionalized, you know? So yeah, I got us singing. It's my favorite.
So if you had one song to listen to for the rest of your life, you wouldn't have to listen to it continuously.
Yeah.
But when you listen to it, this is the one song you would listen to. What would it be?
I don't have a song, but I have an artist. Like, I do have the sort of, if you're on a deserted island and you can only take one person's music, and that's Nick Drake. I would take only his music. So, Nick Drake. He put out a few albums and then died very young. He was writing music in the 70s, I think, maybe late 60s, early 70s.
I'll bet you that in 10 minutes, Nick Drake purchases are going to spike. The people who are gathered here. One more question, and then she has to go because she's preaching again, and then she's going to get in one of those aluminum tubes and go to Dallas.
But I'm meeting my husband in the airport, so he's going to the Dallas revival with me. So. Yeah.
And Suzanne Stabille's husband is going to pick her up at the airport. You all
with
remember.
Suzanne. Suzanne's coming too.
Yeah. She was here. Did a great day with her. Okay. So one last question.
Okay.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Stop worrying because you are not seated next to Steve Bannon at the banquet. It's my big worry. I mean, let me be clear. It's because I believe in God's grace so much that, and exactly that, like, he'll be there. But I think if God says you don't have to sit next to him, I'd be like, awesome, thank you.
You know, and I want to thank you again for being here. And I love you. I love your stuff. I love reading you. You're a wonderful resource for me. One of the best lines that I've gotten from you is that every time we draw a line, Jesus is on the other side of it. I love that.
Yeah, Jesus is really pretty consistently challenging that way. That's why sometimes I say the gospel's like the worst good news I've ever heard in my life.
Thank you for being here. No matter where you go this week, no matter what happens, remember this. You carry precious cargo, so watch your step.